Hi and welcome to the Rob Moore's Leadership Untitled podcast, the show that invites an expert in the world of L&D and or leadership to share their experiences, insights and advice to help L&D, HR and operational leaders develop themselves and their teams, as well as maybe to avoid some of the traps that we've fallen into ourselves. My guest this week is Ed Monk, the CEO of the Learning and Performance Institute. With the LPI, Ed is influencing the world of L&D to focus on adding real value to the organisations they are part of through a performance mindset and an agile approach, fighting against the old norm of training for the sake of training. Not only do they recognise and support their L&D community individually with their membership offering, but they also contribute greatly to the industry as a whole through their showcase events, Learning Live and the Learning Awards. So let's crack on and speak to Ed. Hi Ed, thanks for joining the Leadership Untitled podcast. How are you today?
Great, thank you. Yeah, all things considered, I can't complain. Yeah, very good.
All things considered, yeah, it's that sort of time in the world at the minute that I think not everyone quite knows whether they're okay or not.
Yeah, I think it comes with a caveat. Let's put it that way. The answer, yeah, I think we're all wanting things to progress now, aren't we? So hopefully, fingers crossed, we're coming to the end of the worst of the situation.
Yeah,
and we can look forward to a brighter rest of 2021. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just for the listener, we're recording this at the start of March, so I think we're kind of in that process now. That I think we're in the false spring, as I saw someone put it the other day. False spring in terms of weather. That we had a day of sunshine and we all thought, well, hey, we want to go to the beach.
Yeah.
And also there's the massive vaccination campaign. So I think, and we also have had Boris saying by June everything will be unlocked. So I think everyone's got their eyes on the prize now.
Yeah. I'm just hoping. I mean, we've been here before. We've had a few false dawns, haven't we, in the last few months, thinking things will improve. But with the vaccinations, hopefully, we can start planning to do things differently and a little bit more normality. Absolutely. In the next few weeks. It would be great, wouldn't it? We've missed
Absolutely. Just before we started, I noticed you've got a guitar behind you as well for those watching on YouTube. Do you play it, or is it like the guitar I've got that I bought in lockdown, learned to play one thing and then never used it again?
No, it's a real guitar for starters. It's not porcelain. I do play guitar. Yeah, I'm not particularly good, but I do really enjoy playing it. I remember at the start of the pandemic, actually, I pushed out sort of 10 things that I'm doing to try and cope with lockdown. It was, doing meetings while I was walking. So keeping the AirPods in and doing some phone meetings, trying not to do every meeting as a virtual Zoom call, exercising every day, not wearing AirPods to some meetings as well, but also at the end of every day, my kind of way in which I separate work, because I'm at home, from home life, is I'll play that for 10 minutes. And that's it's like the drive home, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, that's crucial actually, because most of the commute that I used to have, I used to always listen to podcasts, or one of my favorite things to do was listen to Audible books.
Yeah.
And I found I've just stopped listening to them because I haven't just got that pocket of time that I used that for. So the commute used to be a pain. Now it's actually it's a pain. I don't have the commute because I enjoyed listening to those things.
This is it. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any routine at the beginning of the pandemic. Everything was all over the place, really. So I think I realized very quickly that I am a person that needs that. So I do need to have sort of set things happening, do that, give myself a break. Otherwise, I can find myself working flat out all the way through, still doing emails late at night.
Yeah.
And after a while, that starts to take its toll, I think.
Oh, absolutely does. It completely does. And I think it's just so much easier, as you've said before there, that when we're in the same place, the boundaries between work and home start to become a little bit more blurred. So even if you do manage to get out for half an hour and have your tea with the family, then you can very easily just slip back into the office and stay there until midnight if you're not careful.
Oh, yeah. We peaked, Robert, actually doing emails while we're eating as a family, and we're talking to each other, we're getting the phones out. That's when we realized there's probably a problem here that we need to resolve. So yeah, we've all changed the way we're doing everything, I guess, in the last 12 months. And like we said, hopefully, but I'd be interested in maybe talking to you about this. We might cover this in the next hour or so, but it's also been interesting to see the reactions to where people are working and what people want. We've been on a real journey at the LPI from loving the novelty of working at home to people want to be back in the office to actually we want a mix of the two. So within a 12-month period, it's changed dramatically, I think.
I think it's I think personally it's a great metaphor for something I believe in, which is we tend to be quite polarized, or the choices we put forward tend to be quite polarized in what we do and in business. It's either this or that. Pretty much everything. Do you believe in right wing, left wing? Do you believe in performance consulting, training consulting, e-learning, or classroom? It's everything. And I think the best question to ask yourself at times is, what could I put "and" in the middle of those things and make it work?
That's a great way of looking at it. Yeah.
I think exactly that, because I think people will generally have missed going into the office for all the great things that they're like, the relationships, the people who speak to, the water cooler chats, having lunch together, the walks, whatever it might be. Just like my kids, never thought I'd hear them say it, but they've actually missed going into school for those same reasons.
Yeah, same as mine. Yeah, I think somebody said to me the other day that Twitter was the death of nuance.
Okay, let me process that one.
No, I really liked it because it was, they're basically saying that, like you're saying, it's a polarized environment, so you have to be one thing or the other. And if you're sitting on the fence and you haven't really got an opinion on it, then you're going to be attacked as well. So you may as well be the opposite. And we don't seem to have any subtlety anymore, any nuance to things. You can't be, a little bit something and a little bit something else. You have to be identified. Obviously, cancel culture, people are ready to wipe that out straight away. So yeah, it's been a very strange period for humanity, I think. Not just the last 12 months, but maybe the way digital has impacted our lives in ways that we didn't think. There's that famous interview with David Bowie when he predicts the impact of the internet, which maybe I'll share the link and you can put it out, Rob, when you share this. And he was the only person that seemed to really get it at that time. He's been interviewed by Jeremy Paxman, talks about it being everything. It will become everything. It will impact absolutely everything that we do. And I think Jeremy Paxman says, isn't it just another communication medium though? Not really.
no, much bigger than that.
Quite a lot more than that. So yeah.
Well, it is absolutely everything we do, everything we order, everything we want to eat to order, and just it can all be done on it. And I think that technology will go into the new world. That some places like you look at Weatherspoons before the pandemic were doing it, and I think that's the route that all pubs and restaurants might go down now. That you can just sit at the table with your table number, order it on your phone, and it's brought to your table. There's just better ways of integrating what we do and making it easier for everybody. I'm hoping the days of queuing 20 deep at a bar are gone. No one wants to do that.
Do you think, though, in the spirit of thinking that you miss things and your kids missing school, do you think in a strange way you would miss that?
Queuing at a bar?
Yeah.
No. That's the one thing. That's the one thing I wouldn't miss.
So there's a limit.
There's absolutely a limit.
Yeah.
I mean, traffic jams. Like I'd miss the commute, but I wouldn't miss traffic jams.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. Because I was having this conversation the other day. I mean, we could go off on this, I suppose, but it's this idea, we talk about it at the OPI, this conspiracy of convenience. Mm-hmm. So society and learning at large has been driven by convenience. And the phrase was used by Nigel Harrison a long time ago to talk about this idea that we just booked people on courses, and that's how L&D existed. The business went, we need people on those courses, and the L&D department went, fine, we'll do that. And the measurement at the end of the year was how many courses have you delivered? And everybody was kind of buying into this ruse for quite a while. It was, getting away with it.
Yep.
But now there's a new conspiracy of convenience, I would suggest, which is as long as it's fast content, as long as I can access it quickly, then great. The quicker, the better. The fastest LXP, the better. And this last 12 months has changed that, I reckon. I think people are realizing that doesn't necessarily make it effective. It's not necessarily, good learning in terms of I have upskilled myself. It was just fast access to content. And I'm very pleased with the direction of learning and development now. I think it's going to be really exciting, really creative industry in the next few years as we move away from technology being the kind of ultimate panacea and try and attach it to humanity and how it can impact humanity. That really interests me.
There's that thing again, though, isn't it? It's putting the hand in the middle of them rather than it all being about technology. How can we make technology work in the way we want it to? I mean, what you've just made me think then, When I reflect on it, I'm ashamed to say it, but I've got the Amazon Alexa devices in the house. Other smart devices are available. And we've got the Philips Hue bulbs as well that kind of go with them. So you can literally just turn over in bed at night and just go, right, Alexa, turn off the bedroom lights now. It just does it. Now, I actually am ashamed to say that the other night, I was going back downstairs for a bit, and I told Alexa to turn off the light, and I think I was actually stood closer to the light than I was to the Alexa. It's like, really, I've got to check myself here. That the technology, it's been brilliant, but then I've just become almost brain dead to the fact that it doesn't always need to be driven by that.
Yeah, but it permeates everything. There's I did a presentation recently for Microsoft, and one of the slides I used in it was talking about deep learning and the fact that you have to contextualize what you've accessed as content. So you might not really know it. I think Charles Jennings said accessibility has replaced knowledge retention as power within business. So as long as you can access the answers to things, you didn't need to memorize it. To remember it, I guess, is a better way of putting it. And in this, the exam question shows a picture of one of the presidents of the United States of America from the past, right? And it says, which US president is this? And underneath the picture, because it's a copyright picture, it has a little C in a circle, Getty Images, copyright Getty Images. And the child has answered the question, Getty Images, thinking that's the name of the president because it has it written underneath it.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in danger here of not understanding the context behind the content. And although that's a kind of humorous example, put that into a kind of nuclear processing plant kind of thinking, and we've got a bit of a bigger problem rather than an 11 plus exam paper, something like that. So it's important. I think that's one of L&D's roles now, is to contextualize and appropriate the content for the business that you're in.
I think you're right. I think you look at it, certainly in my background, certainly a lot of call center work, and they've tended to have, for the frontline staff, they tended to have help systems, and those help systems have been, to put it bluntly, they've been digital user manuals for the things they've been using. So from a Charles Jennings point of view, absolutely, all that well, it can't possibly be memorized. There's too much of it, and it is accessible, brilliant. But the trouble is, it's not accessible in a way that befits the situation in which it's being used. To have to put someone on hold for 5 minutes while I go and read all the things I need to read to try and understand what I need to do next. And I kind of blend into that conversation, the difference between problems and symptoms again, to kind of go, you know what? Yeah, that has solved something, but it's solved a symptom rather than a problem. And that symptom was, there's probably far too many complex systems for people to get their head around to do the job. Yeah.
Well, it's the same as the light bulb.
Yeah.
It's the same situation as the light bulb, isn't it? In that the process was built there to make something better, but actually it's got in the way, or it's not been contextualized. It doesn't fit in that particular situation. That's been something that's been ignored, I think, by L&D at large in favor of this sort of blinkered sprint towards convenience. To ignore everything else, let's just get access to as much content as possible as quickly as possible. And too many mistakes are being made now. Too many learning experience platforms are being bought by big organizations. They're sort of buying the 7th and the 8th because this one is the one. This one will do it now. And I was just amazed, really, to see that one of the outcomes of the pandemic that we're still in at this point is more of a reflection on whether these things are actually working, and a look at what is working for humans, and a bigger focus on corporate social responsibility and upskilling and reskilling. These are all very human things, rather than what's the best piece of tech out there to allow me to get rid of 50% of my L&D team, save money, and drive convenient access to content.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the thing is, I mean, my story, I think I probably told you when we chatted the other day, but the listeners will know that I talk about having a 20-year career in L&D, 5 restructures 10 restructures during that time, 5 redundancies from those 10 restructures.
Yeah.
So I kind of go, you know what? There's a number of things at play here that, you wouldn't get rid of a team that was really valuable to the organisation, or certainly had clear enough value that they were of obvious purpose going forward as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you can get a piece of software or a system that does what an element of that team does a lot more effectively and cheaply, it's no wonder you're going to look at it. So again, though, there's the problem and the symptom. You're solving the symptom of something here by introducing that. Completely get it, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that the L&D team were working on the wrong thing in the first place, potentially.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not for 1 minute, besmirching the reputation of technologies in our sector. That they've allowed us to do incredible things, obviously. But I think it's an important socioeconomic change or development that we've seen in the last year, that the shift has been on looking after, not just in L&D, but if you think about the fact that we've missed seeing each other as a human race, and we were saying before we started recording the podcast today, Rob, that, certainly at the LPI, we've gone on this journey from, which I think most companies have, large companies have. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was the novelty, and it was, sunny this time last year, or March last year. Yeah, March last year. And, a couple of Zoom calls a day. It's quite cool. Everybody's now on Zoom, and actually I don't need to go anywhere, and I'm saving on petrol, and there's no commute, and this is great. Yeah. And then the Zoom meetings increased, so I've got 7 tomorrow. It's brilliant. It's really convenient. I've got 7. I'm going to be able to meet 7 people. It's fantastic. And as we went on, people who were working at the LPI were actually really keen to get back into the office, because they were really struggling with constantly doing, Zooms, Teams, whatever, Google Meets, and it all being very kind of 2D, and none of this, the nuance of sharing opinions and disagreeing a little bit, and talking to somebody whilst not seeing your own face is something which is quite nice about seeing other people. So now we're at the point of, we went great at being at home. We all want to go back to the office. And now we're at the point of, is there a way we could be in the office if we wanted to all collaborate, but then work from home if we wanted to? And I think that's probably what we'll see a lot of companies do, which will obviously drive how learning will be. If people are going to have a mixed relationship geographically with work, then learning has to reflect that. So, it's to me, it's really interesting to see what's happening. We haven't had something that impacts learning as much as this does happen to us in my lifetime.
Oh, it's a massive catalyst. I mean, the irony in what we're talking about there is as well that, and I'll stick my hand up and own up to this one as well, is that even in the office, how much time did we spend on Skype calls? And no one even talks about Skype now. It is all Zoom and Teams. And
strange, yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? But even with the people around us, and I think there's something to be said for it, that we're now seeing the value in all those different elements. And I think in that same conversation I was chatting about, how I think school sometimes is a good parallel to what's happening in work. And this time last year, I think the schools were hit for 6 a little bit, because they went, how do we do all this stuff online? We can't. We've never had to do that. And how do we do it with all these kids that are all in separate rooms to each other? And it was a struggle for a while. And then the next phase of it was to just do everything we do normally online. We'll just make it fit. And then that just became, I think that's the point where kids go, I just want to come into school. This doesn't work for me. And then in this latest one, they've actually done a lot better. It's been built. Everything they do is built around this style of activity. So I'm actually an advocate for saying, why don't they, once a month, whatever it might be, have a day like this where they don't have to go into the school? It could be once a week. But at the same time, again, using the and instead of the or, bring people together when that's the most appropriate and impactful thing to do.
Yeah, I would flip that and say the other way around, but for universities.
Yeah.
I think what you might find in our lifetime is that most of the educational element of university, the university experience will be online. but you'll be able to socialize the content.
Yeah.
Both online and face to face. You'll be able to go to the campus if you want to. But I think Open University's registrations have gone through the roof, predictably.
Yeah.
So you look back on the way academic education was 100 years ago, and you compare it to now, or to a couple of years ago, and not much has changed. It's still sort of teacher at the front, rows of desks, sorry. And now I think this is a stake in the sand to go, it is possible. Now, my wife is head of maths at a local school, and there is no way that soon, school education is going to be mainly virtual for so many reasons, not least the welfare of the child and parents needed to work. So that won't happen. But I think possibly, post 16, further education could become more digitally delivered in our lifetime than face to face. And I was asked a few years ago, what would I consider to be the measure of success in my role as CEO at the LPI? And in my life in L&D, if I could turn around the way university education is delivered, then I think I would die happy, really, because that still remains a mystery to me, that is the way we're all accepting it being delivered. If you were asked at work to pay £9,000 a year for access to a course, and it was delivered in a way where you were going to hear some content that may come up in an exam that you'll do in 3 years' time, you would really question that process.
Yeah.
So I think this healthy questioning of the way things are is of particular interest to me, from school education, post 16, and obviously the area that I focus on, which is workplace learning. And I am seeing real change happening, and we're going to see amazing transformations of the way people are learning at work. We're already seeing it, really. But I hope that we move away. I think you'll agree with me, Rob, on this. I hope that we move away from the jargon-fueled industry that we've been in, which has just been, catchphrases and portmanteaus to try to find ourselves something that we can, it's all about e-learning. It's all about digital learning. It's all about blended learning. It's all about learning in the workflow. And we just leap from one trend to another. Actually, I would go as far as to say it's all about people. It's about learning and it's about people. The format is almost irrelevant. Yeah, it's about how we get the best out of people to drive our businesses forward, and importantly, to drive the learner forward or our colleague forward. Those are our two responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned obviously the LPI a few times now, so I think it would be quite good for the guys listening in. Could you give us kind of an overview, a summary, what it is that you guys do? And I guess also from my point of view, would be interesting is what's your journey been to actually be there?
Right. Yeah. Sure. Well, the LPI is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, so it's been around a long time.
That's fantastic.
But we've rebranded, and I'll be really honest with your listeners. We've rebranded to LPI rather than Learning and Performance Institute, partly because we're a global brand, so that doesn't lend itself to other languages. But equally, I think sometimes the word institute can have associations in people's heads of this old, established standards body. We're really not that. So we were okay saying that we're not that when we were 5 years old, but now that we're 25 years old, I feel like there's a danger of us becoming that. So it's really important to me, whenever anybody asks what do we do, that we convey we are very agile, very dynamic. Look at the things we've done in the last 12 months, and you'll see that we really react to the way L&D is going. Yep. So it exists for learning professionals. It's one of the largest, I think, communities of learning professionals in the world, and our responsibility is to help them do their job better, and obviously to associate learning with the performance of the business and with the performance of the individual learner. So certification programs, we're a membership body, events, networking, digital academies, self-assessment, software, everything that you'd expect from an institute. But yeah, where we probably differ to other institutes is that we're not chartered, and that allows us to be incredibly agile. So if people want a rapid certification program in virtual classroom, we will build that. We don't have to go through committees.
Yeah.
We can get that built. And we did that at the start of the pandemic, helping numerous organizations around the world to upskill people to carry on delivering learning, you know. Yeah. So that's the OPI. My journey is, I began in publishing with trade magazines, and then the Institute was founded 25 years ago, and our passion was well, at that point, it was called the Institute of IT Training, actually, and our passion was to sort of self-regulate,
okay.
for the industry to self-regulate, because it was, I don't know if you're old enough to remember, Rob, but
there's a test
but
now.
It was,
I'm not going to tell you if I am.
But... No, I know. Yeah, it's the beauty of a podcast. It was quite. It could have been described as a rogue environment. Let's put it that way. In the mid '90s, IT training, and that you could buy a Word course for £2,500, and so there was a lot of money being made, negligible benefit to the learner from some companies. So, having been in publishing and seen, for a magazine that we had called IT Training, seen these organizations advertising, and then finding out that, hang on a minute, really, they're charging that much, and it just felt unsavory. We set up the OPI, or the IITT as was, and it grew pretty rapidly. And then over the years, we were realizing that it was non-IT training people who were wanting to become a part of what we did. Yeah. So it became more generic. 2010, changed the name to Learning and Performance Institute. And we now operate in 58 countries worldwide, working with, the top brand names, I guess, that you would know in the world, to help them put learning at the heart of how their business performs. And it's been amazing, actually. I mean, I feel that genuinely, I know a lot of CEOs say this, but it's a privilege to do the job I do. You get to witness some amazing things, and none more so, I guess, than we have an awards event, the Learning Awards. But like everybody, we've had to, I hate this word, but we've had to pivot, and we couldn't do the face-to-face event for obvious reasons. So we needed to move that online, and it's a really big challenge for us, because we're used to having 800 people in a great hotel in Mayfair, and now we effectively produced a TV program. But it never ceases to amaze me what we're capable of doing as an organization, and how the industry is capable of being agile. And some of the stories that we've heard coming out of the Learning Awards have been astounding. Dina O'Gorman and the work she did at the NHS is mind-blowing, to sort of shift in 48 hours from a kind of split classroom and e-learning model to everything is delivered in virtual classroom. And we were ready for this because we had a massive incident plan for just this situation. That's for the NHS.
Yeah.
It's not a small organization.
Not at all, no.
No, it's unbelievable. So I think L&D people, we talked about L&D being the top table, having a seat at the table. Yeah. And it's always been a bit of a throwaway statement, hasn't it, over the years? And it's changed. I'm not going to say that it's changing. It has changed, and it's still improving. There are chief learning officers in most organizations in the FTSE 250. There weren't only a few years ago. And learning is now number one for investment. Like, how do we develop our people? Microsoft spending millions on Get On 2021. I think it was AstraZeneca yesterday that was announcing sort of billions in upskilling and reskilling projects. So all of a sudden, it's this incredibly vibrant, lucrative industry to be in, which means there's lots of creativity, because there's lots of money going around in it as well. So yeah, I genuinely love the job that I do. It's a privilege to do it, work with great people, and I get to work alongside great people in the industry.
It's still interesting for me, even just in a name that, we've talked about the and/or decisions that that need to be made, and in the name itself, learning and performance. Not that anyone would ever have called it the Learning or Performance Institute, but it is. but then again, quite often that is actually the decision that does need to be made, or is made rather, in organisations that I may have been on a course, or a good example I tend to use is that leaders who go onto a coaching course and they've learned something that would be useful to them, and they've actually learned why it would be useful to them, and then when they go back to the team, the emphasis is very much on performance and results, and they make a choice. Then they choose between the learning that they've gone through and the continued learning that's required, and the performance and the results that they need to go after. And at that moment, quite often when the pressure hits, it's very rarely, almost non-existent, that people will choose the learning. They will go, I need to hit the result because that's what will keep my job. That's what will give me my bonus, my incentive, my targets, all that sort of stuff. So I guess what would be quite interesting is what's your view on that kind of paradox, or that problem that people find themselves in terms of choice, both from within the L&D team themselves and those who we serve in the organisation?
I think it was a paradox which drove learning down a particular road for years and years, that problem. And it was an existential crisis for learning and development. This idea that you only had to go to conferences 10 years ago, up until 3 years ago, I would say, and see the keynote and the paid for sessions. And most of them would be about ROI, or a watchword for the LPI around that period was efficacy, demonstrable impact. How do we prove? And it was from a very weak position. L&D was sort of saying, we're desperately trying to show that we're doing a good job. How can you help us show that we're doing a good job? That has completely changed. That's turned on its head. Most large L&D functions don't seem to be going through this existential crisis. In fact, they are being asked, like I say, to be front and center. And right, here's our job: attracting talent, retaining talent. We want to increase our margins by this, and to do this, our people need to be able to do this. Yeah. So they're part of the conversation now. It's interesting you bring up the P in LPI, because it was actually maybe I'll give you unique insight into some of the discussions at the LPI around that period. I've never said this before, but let's just say it wasn't a popular name at the beginning, right? When we were looking to change name, because the associations with the word performance were sort of, it sounds theatrical or dramatic, doesn't sound like what we're about, really. I'm not going to say who thought that, obviously.
No.
That would be a coup to find out that, I have to say. But
we'll go through that when I stop recording. We'll go through that bit afterwards.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So it was like you're so astutely pointing out and eloquently pointing out, the and or the or is a really big part of conversation. So it doesn't need to be binary. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And I was passionately pro having the word performance in our name, because at that point, 2010, L&D was having to justify its existence. If you think about the crash, 2009, things that get cut are marketing and L&D. So, you then launch an institute. You want to be the kind of people right at the front, waving the flag, saying, no, we are brilliant. We're having a big impact on what your business does. Yeah. So eventually, the vote happened, and we all went with Learning and Performance Institute. And over the years, it's proven to be a really great name, because it's done the job. We're not just about learning and development. And honestly, I think when people were talking about learning and development around that period, it was seen as a cost center. Yeah. It was seen as something that, in the worst cases, it was seen as a sweetener in companies. If we're being totally honest, of course we love L&D. We've got an L&D function. Yeah, we record number of courses this year, and it's brilliant. We love the L&D people. And ask the average CEO around that period, they wouldn't be able to tell you probably the name of anybody in L&D. So it's just their sort of lip service, I guess, is the phrase I'm looking for. Now, as I said to a colleague in the industry, Peter LeBrow, who's brilliant at what he does, only this morning, I really feel that existential crisis is something we've got to let go of now. I don't think we need to be trying to constantly be thinking about how we prove our worth. We are worth having in organizations, and actually we're driving significant change. And you can see it in countless examples politically, in associations of business leaders, in the very best. We get to see the very best L&D functions in the world because of the awards. And the organizations are absolutely committed to learning. The CLO is in the board meetings, and they are, second on the agenda. They're not any other business. What about L&D?
Yeah.
It's definitely changed, and for the better, obviously, for our profession. But I also think learning's critical to most things in our life. How are we going to get better at things if we're not committed to learning?
Yep.
Plus, I think the Economist described lifelong learning as an economic imperative 4 years ago. And Heather McGowan in McKinsey described learning as the new pension, which is a cool way of putting it, in that you have to keep going. Things move so quickly now. Yep. It's like the latest iPhone or Android phone. If you miss out a couple, you're not really in tune with the functionality anymore. Or I was never a gamer. I don't know about you, but I was never somebody. No, I was. So at university, it was something that I just missed out on. And now seeing my son on the Xbox, there's no way I can play FIFA against him because he's like a Jedi on it. I just.
Yeah, well, don't get me started about gaming, because it's just my son plays Fortnite. And before that, he played
Minecraft.
Minecraft, that was it. And Roblox and all these sort of things. And you just sort of think to yourself, the price of games, weirdly, when you really think about it, hasn't changed much. I can remember for the Super Nintendo going to pay 60 quid for a game. And before that, the tapes for the ZX Spectrum Plus 2. Now, we are showing age now.
I remember that.
Horace Goes Skiing and the likes like that. They weren't cheap things. But the difference now, and it's actually become more compounded now, because the likes of the games that we're talking about, Fortnite, is free to download. But then there's even subscription services to them. I tend to be the techie person in the house that solves any issues that happen. That when it comes to that, I go, I haven't got a clue.
No,
Ryan is the resident expert when it comes to that. I just know he's not getting virtual books with real books. I know that.
This is it though. But you take my point then, that to keep up from a learning perspective, if you just stop, you can get left behind. And I think there is a generation, but as time progresses, that will disappear. If you think about, it's 2021 right now. All graduates 2021 will have been born in this century. Yeah. The year they started school is the year the iPhone launched. Yeah. So it's totally natural to them. From now on, we are working with people whose academic life began with technology being around.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that there was a bit of a trend going on. I think it was only the other week I saw on TikTok, and it was asking people how they take a photo. I don't know if you saw it. So without any equipment around, they just said, just use your hands to show me how you take a photo.
Oh, right.
And over a certain age, and this is obviously going to be more relevant to the people watching on YouTube than they were doing the usual sort of thing. Yeah, kind of the C and the reverse C with the fingers, as if they're holding the camera. Yeah. Whereas people below a certain age, I guess the people we're talking about now, were doing it more like this, with the hands together and just the thumbs up, because they do it with a phone. And I think another famous video going around is that when you leave a couple of teenagers in a room with an old dial telephone and say, go on then, order a pizza. And they're going to be hungry come morning still, because what's going on?
What is this? Yeah.
Exactly that. But it's not that long ago. You're right. And people have been born and are now, and let's get this right. Yes, graduating, but also in some senior leadership positions in organizations as well, who've never experienced that. They've always been part of this technical revolution as we see it.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see this disparity between graduates who are coming out from 16 years of technology-based education and living their life, to into a business that for the next 20 years could be still rooted in 20th century business practices.
Yeah.
So there's an odd disparity, and the leadership team is going to feel out of touch with what can really be done. I was one of the first academic years to do, I think it had become GCSE the year I was doing it. I don't think it was still O level, but the years when you're 16 years old doing an exam, whichever it was called at that point,
Yeah.
in the United Kingdom, and we were allowed to take a calculator into the maths exam.
Yeah.
But my elder brother, 4 years older than me, had sat his maths exam, and you weren't allowed a calculator. And I distinctly remember him saying, "Well, you're cheating."
Yeah.
Because you're using a calculator.
Yeah.
Now, you wouldn't, if you were back in the offices, you wouldn't walk past the finance department, have a look in and see that they're using calculators and go, they're cheating in there. They don't understand maths at all. It's just something that you become used to. And I've made the bold prediction that I think smartphones will be allowed in 16-year-old GCSE exams in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Why would they not?
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I can remember a situation when I was working abroad once in a partner site, and they had all their information on a help system. And if I kind of go to the route that some of the processes were quite simple just to look up. But after the training, they actually marked them. This was operational leaders that wanted to mark the staff and assess them after training. They would assess them based on their ability to remember something like ID&V and compliance as a customer comes through.
Right.
And I just had a chat with them and said, well, what would you do on the floor if they couldn't remember it? Well, it wouldn't be an issue. They'd just look it up. Well, why are we assessing the ability to remember it now if that's never a requirement in the role? And actually, you don't want it to be a requirement, because if the process changes slightly, you want them to keep looking it up.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was just a foreign concept to them. But I completely agree with you. I mean, I put a post on LinkedIn the other day. I'd actually found judging by GCSE comments, you might be around the same sort of era at school, of my National Record of Achievement folder.
Right.
I found while clearing out a bunch of stuff. And that drove a load of comments and other people of the similar sort of age that Adam, and what a pointless thing that was. And it drew out the second most pointless thing, or biggest lie that school had ever told you, is that you wouldn't always have access to a calculator.
Yeah.
We carry that phone around now, and we've got access to a tape measure, a calculator, a computer, a word processor, everything we'd want, really.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Crazy.
No, I know. It would be ridiculous of us to ignore the advancements in technology. And I do think there's a disparity between individual human consumption of content and how we learn at home to how we learn at work still. That we haven't kind of caught up with that really at work. We're still, in a lot of instances, they're still delivering courses and programs. But actually, when I'm asked which are the biggest learning organizations in the world, the answer is Google, YouTube. They are where people are actually going to learn.
Yeah.
And increasingly, if you talk to kids, maybe under 13, and ask them questions, and they find the answers, increasingly the language being used when they're saying that they're getting the answers, it is that they feel that they know that.
Yeah.
It's not that I can get that for you. It's, I know. And then they'll tell you the answer. And if you take that as if you mirror that with the way language has developed over years and years and years, it will just become natural to feel that that is an extension of us. And, to feel that getting the answer, I mean, it was only a couple of years ago. I remember one sort of Boxing Day or Christmas Eve or something. And it really annoyed me that we were having a conversation as a family and trying to remember. I can't remember. It was like the name of a particular artist. Who sang this song? Who sang this song? Yeah. And it's a good conversation. You're going, oh, it's the guy who was in the band who, and then somebody just goes, yeah, Shaky Stevens. And then it's kind of like,
it was actually Shaky Stevens. That's Elvis.
Yeah, I'm making that. Who knows who it was in the end? But the point being, we've got to be careful as well that we're not killing off the process to get to that point. Like the example around Getty Images and the president.
Yeah.
You know, you can get an answer. You can get an answer off the internet. But that's, you know, fact-based stuff. Arguably, most of the time, it's going to be right.
Yeah.
Thoughts, philosophies, processes, psychology behind things, the nuance that we've talked about.
Yeah.
That's where it can be dangerous. And how we formulate our own views, we might disagree violently on some things, you know, but I would still happily have a drink with you, you know, in a pub and talk about stuff. We've got to be careful, I think, as a society, that we're not polarizing even more, like we're seeing on social media, based on what we're reading on the internet. I mean,
well, that's it. You know, one person's formed their opinion on a YouTube video they watched, another person's formed it based on the Wikipedia article that they read, and that becomes their canon, that becomes their truth. And you're quite right. We have to be careful. I mean, the example you used there about sitting around trying to remember a name. That kept my mum and dad busy all weekend. Back in the 80s, it was like, well, exactly. I'm just gonna phone Sue, see if she's remembered that. And 10 phone calls later, nothing. And then half an hour later, the phone would ring and someone's remembered. Yeah. And then it's going back round that network and saying, Sue got the answer. It's Howard Keel.
Yeah.
Well, was it
Howard Keel?
Again. Yes, it always was Howard Keel. It was the guy, Seven Brides and Seven Brothers. Who was it? What was his name? He was in Dallas. Anyway, I've just lost all the listeners under the age of 40 there now.
Yeah. But it's true, isn't it? It's true. And there's almost more, there's A, more joy in that experience, and B, it's probably more memorable.
Yeah.
You know, there's only so much content we can take on board. And somebody's probably done research on this as to how we store stuff that we just access as factual answers on the internet, or stuff that we've gone through to find out the answer. You know, you'll remember the process. I can't remember where this is from, the book, but it's human nature. I was reading a book recently, and this is in there. It's human nature to sort of cancel out the negative experiences in your memory, in your life. You know, so when you look back on the holidays with the kids when they were young, you just remember the great time they were sitting there on the beach smiling. Yeah. You don't remember the fact that they were sick all the way on the plane, you know, violently over other people. You just ignore that bit.
Yeah.
And that rose-tinted retrospect kind of has made us learn better a little bit. Julia Shaw talks about it in The Memory Illusion, an amazing book, about how we actually rewrite our memories. Mm-hmm. But in learning, I think it's now that appropriation of the vast amounts of content that we've got access to at the touch of a button is going to be interesting. And for L&D leaders, you know, I'm on the record as saying that we need to move away from convenience being the only driver, and we need to look at it being compelling. So it needs to act like a marketing function to cut through the noise. It needs to be constructive in that it has to do something. It can't just be, got access to that, read it, thanks, and convenient. And then you'd probably add to that contextualized and a cultural fit.
Yeah.
Because what might work for one company won't work for another one.
No, 100%.
You know, from a learning perspective.
Completely agree. I mean, I love the name Learning and Performance Institute, because I just think it just brings the two elements together perfectly. Because even I'm on the record as saying that learning is always happening, and it's like oxygen. Basically, it's everywhere, and you can choose whether you're breathing it in, or it can be toxic what you're breathing in. It's all these things.
It's so funny you should say that.
Go on.
You're not see if I can find this.
You're not breathing something in you shouldn't be breathing in.
No. This is from a script. This is a huge screen at Learning Live about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was my quote.
Yep.
On it.
Absolutely. Exactly this, everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's all consuming.
It is. I think that's the bracket we need to make, that I think, you know, and this is my observation, that a lot of L&D teams and leaders become overly self-absorbed in what they produce to create learning. And whether you like it or not, is one of the things that I say is that that in terms of leaders and seeing that people in their teams have things like bad habits, or doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or circumventing processes, the word learning is applicable there too. They have learnt that poor behavior, or they have learnt that negative habit. It's all around that. It's always happening. And there's a reason. And again, I kind of see the link to performance again, that someone's found that bad habit or someone's found that loophole because they found it helps them to do the thing they were trying to do either quicker or more effectively, or with less work on their own part, or gets them to their target or their bonus quicker, or gives them more opportunity of getting their bonus. And at that sort of point, you kind of go, well, if you're targeting people in a certain way, you can't criticize them for doing everything they can to hit that, because as humans, we will do that. And I think it's the same with the again, kind of looking at my kids, and I go, what is it they get interested in when they actually want to learn something? And my lad, I just go, what are you doing right now? Because he's on Fortnite, as I mentioned earlier on, and then he's also got YouTube on the telly with someone else talking about Fortnite and playing it. And that's what he's doing. He's learning. He's learning because he's got something he knows he needs to achieve in this game, and he's recognized a way that can help him achieve that.
Yeah.
And so this boils down then to kind of this new wave. I think we talked about last week when we just we kind of had a preamble around the podcast was the people focus on the agenda seems to be coming along at pace, and was so before the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
And that, but it is, again, it's not that either or. There's the and in the middle, and the reason for that is that we need to bring people on that journey of what the vision and the values and the mission of the organization is, and actually help those people define and measure what that performance looks like, and distance it maybe from the results for a second. So they're actually bought into it. Because I'll give you another very quick example, is that my son, probably for the last 5 years, has been using YouTube to learn a lot of stuff to do with this sort of gaming or drawing or things that he's done. But then, it must be longer than that, actually, because what the story I'm about to tell you is when he needed to learn to tie his shoelaces, and he couldn't go into preschool or first year or whatever it was. They said to him, you need to be able to tie your shoelaces. So he had an energy to learn it. And I said, well, instead of me just sitting down and showing you, try and take the ex-trainer out of it, why don't you try and learn it in the same way as you love learning stuff? And he went to look for a video online, tying your shoelaces, and the first thing he did was, I don't know. That didn't help. So he went, something that he really wanted to do, and he knew he had a drive to be able to do it, and a learning method he liked, just didn't work for him. But the interesting thing was when I sat down with him and just said, okay, how many videos have you looked at? Just the one. Let's have a look, see if we can just research and look at something else if another one stands out to us. And the second video we found, he did it within 10 minutes, and he loved it and he enjoyed it.
That's it.
So there was something kind of interesting there that I'm a big proponent of coaching.
Yeah.
So there's somebody sitting down with you that just because you know the goal, and I think these are the stages here that L&D gets stuck into providing a great learning experience. On top of that, as organizations and leaders, we need to provide clarity of goal and vision and purpose to people to bring them along so they actually care about the outcome. There's no point training people on something in a wonderful way if they don't actually care about the thing they need to apply that learning to, because they'll just be bored and not bothered about it. And then on top of that, sometimes people aren't perfect. They can veer off that path, or they can fail the first time and struggle with something. So that support, either through a leader or network, your peers, your colleagues, or a coach, again, in terms of embedding, is essential, because Ryan would have turned away at that point and gone, that doesn't work. And you know what? It might not have worked. But just being able to have a conversation with someone at that time meant it did work for him.
Yeah, and I completely agree with all of that. My son's 14, and you go in to see him doing his homework, and he has an Alexa for facts. Yep. He's got the screen that he's working on, and he's FaceTiming with his friends to socialize the content.
Yeah,
he doesn't know that he's socializing the content and doing fact-based transfer. What he's doing is using his Alexa, and he's talking to his mates.
Yeah,
but that is a great learning setup. And I think everything that you've just described, I was going to see if you used the word, everything that you've just described in terms of creating a more holistic experience that makes the learning more effective, memorable, and enjoyable, arguably, as well. Because we've all been there and seen sessions where if you want to tie a bow tie, where do you go? You go on YouTube to learn how to tie your shoelaces. Yep. But sometimes that isn't enough, for some people.
Yep.
You know, and I'm not talking about learning styles, heaven forbid, there is no such thing. But there needs to be what we talked about, that contextualization, and also the freedom to learn. There's Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline. I'll send you the link on that. He talked about this 20 years ago. And at the heart of the very best learning organizations, by that term, I mean companies who have learning functions, not vendors, but, you know, Marks and Spencer's, AXA, Virgin Media, and their L&D functions. At the heart of what makes them great learning organizations is their culture.
Yeah,
that's the thing that makes the difference, and that's the bit that you're contextualizing the video on the shoelaces bit. That's you talking to your child about, you know, let's have a look at it then. You see how they're doing this, and this is why they do it that way. That's the deep learning part that gives you the context around why this is a good thing to do. So there's the bit, it's interesting how you framed that, because having the motivation to tie shoelaces because you've got to have been able to tie them when you're going to school is a kind of compliance driven learning metric, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And does that work? It might give you the kind of fear, like, but I need to have this done. I can't go to school.
I think there's something bigger there again, because you're absolutely right. It's that compliance metric that I need to do that. But I think what was actually the bigger picture, which I probably missed out of that part, was that Ryan, it was such a big thing for him because he desperately wanted to go into the next year. And that was one of the things he knew that you needed to have to do to be in that year. So, I mean, and, you know, sometimes it's just about, you know, turning around on the same path and looking at it from a different angle. That, you know, and some people would be motivated by that to go, oh my God, if I don't do this, I won't be able to go into that year. Others will look at it and go, all right, I need to be able to do this to achieve what I want to achieve. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's like unlocking another level.
Yeah.
Isn't it? If you gamified it, he's unlocking another level. Literally, he's going to another year at school. From a game perspective, because he's done that bit, he's opened up the next level and can do the next bit of the game. But yeah, I think it's I mean, we asked 1,700 chief learning officers as part of a survey around Europe what their top challenges were, and their top challenge was building a learning culture. And what they actually meant by that was, you know, employee engagement, giving people the freedom to learn. Are they all right to kind of spend some time developing when, you know, there's a job they know they should be doing as well? Microsoft has learning days in its organization, and they're compulsory.
Yeah.
And it's compulsory that you do not work while you're on them. So, you know, I'm talking to you now, I can't quickly try and sneakily send an email on my phone on the left here. They would be really upset about that, because they really want you to commit to learning for all sorts of bigger reasons than just knowing how to do what you're being taught.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a separate experience away from being at work. And yet the medium by which we're delivering learning has changed so much. There was a survey by eLearning Journal recently, it wasn't ours, but 88.6% of people who responded said that their preferred way of learning at work was virtual classroom. Well, that's a huge statistic. You know, and I think it furthers your point, Rob, around, and by the way, I'm conscious of what I do for a living. I'm not dismissing any other modes of training or learning.
Yeah.
I'm politically savvy enough to say that, but also I believe that. But I think the reason why it's so successful, pandemic notwithstanding, is because there is a human element to it.
Yeah.
So there's that context bit. You know, if your son had been sent a video from the school with the teacher that he'd had talking it through, and it was personalized, I just wonder how he'd maybe react to that. You know, would it be different? Because it'd feel,
I think there's a choice in there, isn't there? There's a choice, and I take your point earlier on about when you said, you know, learning styles don't exist, and you know, I think that's a topic for another day, because we can hours talking about the journey that's been on. My take on all of that is that no, you don't have a concrete style. There are learning preferences in and around the context that you're in right at this moment. And the preference that Ryan had at that moment was that in the first instance, I don't want to learn it this way. It's not going to work for me. And it wasn't driven by how he wanted to learn. It was driven by how he was going to get the result he was after.
Right. That's different. Yeah.
Exactly
Yeah.
that. So that moment, then he found one that he did, and he said, this is going to work for me. So I think if the teacher sends that through, some kids will go, this is exactly what I needed. Other people might go, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I think there's a style in terms of medium, sort of how you prefer to do things. But I'm talking about the traditional auditory, kinesthetic stuff. I think that at the heart of that, though, is if you have a strong learning culture within the workplace, then all of those methods are available to you.
Yeah.
And you feel that you've got the freedom to do it.
Yeah.
Google did that research with Project Archimedes, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, on what makes a successful team. And the number one thing that creates a successful team was psychological safety. Having the freedom wherever you work in a business to, metaphorically put your hand up and ask a question or disagree with leadership, just it being a creative environment.
Yeah.
And sometimes that kind of stuff, that kind of research gets intellectual snobbery would be the response that a lot of people have towards it. And I think we're missing a trick if we ignore stuff like that. We're all working pretty much in very human orientated businesses.
Yeah.
And most of the businesses that are selling things that we work for they're selling to human beings. It's not digital to digital. So even in like big data businesses, it's still based around human experience in the end, if you take it to the nth degree. So yeah, I think L&D, taking your son's experience, L&D has a role to play in ensuring that as wide an option of experiences available. And critically, I think is the main point I would take from the story there is making sure that it's contextualized for the learner. I think it's Heather McGowan, again at McKinsey, who talked about, or it might have been Harvard Business Review, talked about learning having two motivations. One is to obviously drive profit for the business, but also secondly, and equally important, is to drive improvement for the learner. As she describes the profit part as the North Star. You're always going towards that. You can't veer away from that. But on that journey, you're helping learners. And I do think that's really important.
Oh, 100%. But it is that purpose weaving in again, because if you're very clear as an organization and as a CEO and a leader of what it is that the company stands for, and you're very transparent about that, and you, by virtue of that, tend to attract people who believe in the same sort of stuff and have the same values and believe in the same purpose and want to achieve those same things. They weave together in that sense, and they'll want to learn the things that they need to learn to be able to do those things. And by virtue of that, they are growing individually. Because they're actually interested in at a deeply personal level in the stuff that you're doing professionally. I think the opposite side of that is that back in the day when we were lads, our parents and grandparents, you had a job, you went to it, you came back and you had your tea and you went to bed and you got up and you went to work again. Yeah. That was the way it was. Whereas people have got a different choice now, and yes, I believe there's an element of people just want different things from work now. Completely get it. But I think some of the things that people want from work now that we say people didn't want back then, I think it's probably underselling the fact that they probably did want those things and they would have loved those things. I could go in a time machine and go back and say, I'm going to give you more freedom and more flexibility, and you're going to be able to not be in work and you're going to be comfortable and all this sort of stuff. They'd have probably gone, oh yes, please, how can we do that? It just wasn't an option. But I think it's very much an option now for people to go, you know what, I'm going to set up my own company, or I'm going to do my own thing alongside the big job that I do. Because you talk about the onset of technology again for those people that are kind of up to that 20-25 age bracket, who've never known anything different. They've always been able to reach pretty much everyone in the world instantly and sell to anyone in the world and talk about what they can do to anyone in the world. Yeah. Whereas, my granddad, who was working in the Foden's yard in Congleton when I was a lad, what would I do? I can't just suddenly set up my own business and try and sell it to someone in China. I don't get it.
I know. No, I completely, the democratization of how we commercialize things, how we can set up businesses, and the amount of people I know with side hustles. And it's interesting. again, it's another socioeconomic development that we couldn't have predicted. And I think the pandemic has just accelerated it even further.
Absolutely. The amount of people making and selling things. And I'm talking, not just about people baking and selling cakes that are seen online, that sort of stuff, or creating gift boxes and things like that. The amount of independent sole trading businesses that are just running through Facebook, even in their local communities, I think it's amazing. It really is amazing. Yeah. And from a place of being worried, I assume, in quite a lot of those instances about losing roles and being furloughed and all those sort of things, they might actually just triggered and tripped across a certain passion that makes them not want to go back to that world, or at least to a lesser degree.
Maybe a better work-life balance as well, more satisfaction in what they're doing. Yeah, I think I was reading about it being an artisan culture that's come out of the pandemic, and that you're going to have lots of sort of micro businesses subsidizing people's existence.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen so much change. We've seen sort of like a decade's worth of change in a 12-month period that it's almost hard to keep up now. But I do think we're starting to see, from learning side of it and leadership in organizations, the biggest transformation has been a move from technology solving everything to focusing on human beings. And those organizations that have been strong on corporate social responsibility are the ones that will be successful. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Think about what Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy did, changing their conveyor belts to have hand sanitizing gel really quickly. And even at the LPI, we made membership and access to our digital academy free for frontline workers 2 weeks in. I think it's organizations who have that commitment to people and who understand that people are at the heart of what they do. That's what the Business Roundtable said in August 2019. Jeff Bezos and the CEOs of the top US businesses, they came out of that meeting in August 2019 and said, we're putting people at the heart of what we do, and profit is not the sole purpose of these businesses. And that is in complete contrast to what basically advanced capitalism in 1970, an article by Milton Friedman saying profit is the sole purpose of shareholders. It was intentionally the antithesis of that statement.
Yeah.
But I don't think they really thought when they said that it would be tested.
No, I mean, it's going back to what we were saying earlier, that the choices for people when Milton Friedman said that were much less again. So yeah, it probably was all about that, because you could say, I mean, you keep talking about and comparing it to kids in school. You go back to that sort of time, and the kids were getting hit over the backside or the hand with a ruler because they were misbehaving. I mean, you just wouldn't get away with that now. So in terms of workers, it was very similar. You went and did your work, else you'd lose your job. So it was all about the profit. Whereas now, if you just do that, the war for talent is no longer between different companies and different industries. The war for talent has also included people just doing their own thing in there. That if you don't give me what I want, I'll give myself what I want.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to have a damn good go at it.
Too right. Yeah. And why not? Yeah. People that we're interviewing now in the last 3 years at the LPI, certainly, I wouldn't want to call it generational, because I think there are people who are, it's definitely not, millennials. I don't like that tag. But increasingly, people of all ages actually are saying, yeah, no, I'd like to do the job. I can give you 3 years.
Yeah.
And you sort of feel, I remember starting work myself thinking that, you were almost begging for the job, because you had to pay rent, and you felt so lucky to get the job. Yeah. And now the control and the power has really shifted to the employee. And yeah, I mean, they're literally saying that I can give you 3 years. Well, thank you very much. That's very kind
first job I got was in the NHS as a technical trainer around the millennium time. And
right.
I genuinely thought, well, that's it. That's my job for life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way I thought about it at that stage. Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, 10 restructures, 5 redundancies later, I left the NHS in 2004. It's a distant memory now. I think, you mentioned ROI a little bit earlier there as well, and it's something that's close to my heart, because the trend I've seen in the companies that I've worked at, and also not just between the different companies, but between the different leaders, and as it's come under different stewardship, maybe during the times I've been there, is that there's been that polarized view again. The person at the top is either going, you can't measure the ROI of training events or learning activities that we're going to put in there, so we're not going to try. It's ridiculous.
Right.
And then others that have gone, yes, you can absolutely can. And they've predominantly gone and concentrated on things that were measurable, but didn't actually prove any sort of impact for the organization other than the number of hours that we've done for them and the number of people who've completed things, those sorts of things. So I've been run quite a number of these episodes now. I'm seeing there's different views on that also.
Right.
So you look at someone like I had David James on the second episode, and David was talking about, you look at things like email systems. People don't look at what the return on investment is on buying and investing in an email system. It's inherent. We know there's going to be a benefit. We also now know there's also going to be a hell of a cost to having that and being preoccupied with your emails instead of doing real work. So more needs to be done on it. But at the same time, no one's actually, well, we'll get rid of email now. Let's just get rid of email because it didn't provide a return on investment. So in that sort of sense, how does L&D fit for you in those organizations? And part B of that question is always for me, how do leaders then play a role in that? Because my take on it is that, I think Simon Sinek, again, I've said this a few times, that he talks about leadership isn't about the results, it's about leading the people who are responsible for the results. To what degree do L&D really need to get down and dirty with the organization and be doing these things versus enabling leaders to do these things?
I think the first question around return on investment goes back to that existential crisis that L&D's got this chip on its shoulder about having to justify its existence. And it's that faster horses metaphor, I think. Is it Daimler? The guy who said you can have whatever color you want as long as it's black. One of the first manufacturers.
Oh, it was supposed to be Henry Ford, wasn't it? I think it's one of those QI moments, though, that he never said it, but everyone thinks he said it.
Right. Yeah. But this idea that people wanted faster horses, they didn't know that they wanted a car. That is a good metaphor, I think, for L&D. And I like David James and a lot of his writing and the work he's doing at Luke. And I think it's convenience. People think the email system, brilliant, it's going to make things work so much more quickly. And then look what happens. A few years later, you're going, right, how do we reduce email? Let's get Teams, instant messaging. And, nothing's perfect. I get that. But return on investment for L&D doesn't start at the end of the process, which often for L&D leaders, it has done. Right, we've done this project. We now need to start looking at how we get a return on investment for this. And it's the wrong way round. Return on investment starts with an understanding of what the objectives are right at the beginning. And unless, the fight begins with representation at board level. So if you take it back to the beginning, L&D has to be saying, look, for this to even work, any of the stuff that happens next and all the domino effects of learning and development, I need to know exactly what it is you want. Otherwise, how am I supposed to prove that we're doing what you want? I think for a lot of organizations, it's been, up until recently, L&D needs to help us drive profit. So it's been about maybe not profit, but productivity. The conversation has been around productivity. How can I get more out of my people? Do we need to expand the sales team, or do you think they can do an extra 5% if they do some training with you? Can we get a CRM system brought in with digital marketing? Then we could get rid of a few people. Excellent. Those kind of decisions are happening. Whereas I think now the conversation, and it carries on from your point around people having more power and this idea that, I'll give you 3 years of my career. I think now companies are seeing that this culture argument is a really big one. It's not a soft, fluffy conversation. So the return on investment is, when you invest in developing your people, is that you will probably attract better talent. You'll probably retain your best talent, and your people will inspire others to do great things. A bad example of this, an example of the opposite, and I can't name the company, but I was asked to. No, definitely not. There is the last day that I work at the LPI, I'll name the company. So we'll talk again. Deal. If I ever leave the LPI, we'll have another chat. But it's a huge company, like really big company. and they asked me to come in and talk to them about how to sell in learning and development, right? So how would we sell our product? It was a vendor. We want to increase our sales. And I said, don't you really want to know how your customers buy? And it messed with their heads. I mean, they just couldn't even compute that. No, this is about us. It's about what we do. Well, no, but, do you want to find out where they're going, though, and find out how they buy? So we had this huge conversation. And before I agreed to do it, I said, so talk me through the size of the sales team. And let's say, for argument's sake, protect the names of the innocent and everything. Let's say there were 50 salespeople worldwide. There were more than that, but let's say there's 50. And let's say the turnover was 20 million, right? They said that, the guy who does most of our sales actually is a guy based in France, let's say. He does about 40% of the target, actually. He does 40% of the target.
Wow.
Right. Okay. So do you really need me? Or do you not just want to talk to him and couldn't you just talk to him? This is what I said.
Yeah.
Couldn't you just sit him down, as we are now, in front of a camera, and get him to describe what he does? Talk me through how you get clients, how you open up conversations with clients, how you close clients. Could you share that with us?
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Because then if he ever leaves, heaven forbid, because you've lost 40% of your revenues, you've got that content, in a digital format.
Or if he's not that great at doing that side of it, get someone to listen to him and help to codify that, and they can present it to other people. Yeah,
in audio format for people to listen to. They could record the video, they could create animated video, interactive stuff. But this guy is delivering 40% of your target. Yeah. And so to take your question around ROI, and I'll come on to the leadership one in a minute, to answer your question around ROI, the response that I got when I suggested that tells you everything you need to know about organizations that are looking at it the wrong way. They said, there is no way we can afford to take him out of the business for 2 days to do those videos.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew.
And I'm not joking.
Amazing,
it's a true story. And I couldn't believe it. That's just basic economics.
Yeah.
You've got 49 other salespeople that if they just went up 5%, come on, what's going on? So it's a dangerous conversation sometimes, ROI, for learning leaders to try and get involved in, because they end up talking about completely the wrong metrics. They're talking about justification from a weak standpoint. Yeah. And it frustrates me that. Whereas actually the cultural side of it is now where we're seeing L&D influence. And it is a really strong, influential part of the organizations that are doing well and those that I admire. And on the leadership side of it, massive fan of the writing of Simon Sinek, the leaders eat last. Yeah. One is just as good as Start With Why, if not better for me, or second. Yeah, you can leave that there. Leave it there. Yeah. It's an Amazon delivery, sorry.
Oh, no need to apologise. I'm sure I've got one or two sitting outside. That's what we do. You sit at home, we order Amazon, we eat pizza. That's lockdown.
And a garage full of brown paper and cardboard at the moment. So I've got back to the tip again. I go on Saturday. But yeah, I think this concept of servant leadership is starting to get a lot of traction now, really. And that we are there to influence and guide rather than govern and enforce. I like that, really. And the people that have influenced me over the years have been people who've been guides and mentors rather than disciplinarians. They encourage creativity and encourage lateral thinking. Yeah. I think, although you're talking about leadership generally, I think in learning leadership, the people that are, the leaders in being learning leaders, the best learning leaders around at the moment are people like Dina O'Gorman at Guys and St. Thomas's, who's just won the kind of best contribution to learning award, or the learning awards, most significant contribution, for the way she pivoted the NHS to become more virtual classroom motivated. And you've got people who are like revolutionizing the vendor side as well. Companies like Degreed and Learnably, up and coming organizations. So I think leadership can come in various formats. But I do agree with, I think, what your implication was, that leadership as a concept has completely changed in recent years. And the reason for that, in a nutshell for me, is that never before have we had access to so much content.
Yeah.
So the power was with the leader and their 25 years experience of working at that company,
Yeah.
and you and your role as a trainer at the beginning of the NHS, without access to the internet or early days of the internet, this person would have all the power because they had all the knowledge. And in my experience in those days, often didn't want to transfer the knowledge and power because it was their power. So they weren't willing to let it go.
Yeah.
Now you can have conversations as equals with people because I can get the answer, like the Christmas Eve example. Well, we can all look it up. I can look it up as well. So what is it? What is a leader anymore? It's not the amount that they know. It's what they can do with the amount that they know and how they can help people, which therein is the description of servant leadership, I think.
It's accountability and responsibilities again. So the leader is responsible for those people. The people are accountable for their results. How can I support my people in their accountabilities? And from an L&D point of view and an HR point of view, and this is what I do through my business, is how can I support and enable, rather than management development, I think of it as leadership enablement. How can I enable the leaders to do what they need to do, rather than trying to come at it from a completely different angle from them directly to their teams and them have no knowledge of what I'm doing?
So the two things have to be going in the same direction. They have to be 100%. Linked. You can't. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So what I'm keen to do is that, I mean we've covered, I think we need an episode 2, because I had some deep dives into some of the things we've talked about there. Would be amazing. We get to this part, and what I like to do, Ed, is that obviously we're called the Leadership Untitled podcast, is to kind of look back at what we've been talking about and to come up with a title for the episode based on that flow. Based on what we've been talking about, does anything stand out to you as we could label the episode with?
I think we've talked about the importance of people. We talked about the importance of culture in a post-pandemic world. We've obviously covered digital not necessarily being the ultimate panacea.
Yeah.
And I think the nature of how we consume information there's definitely another podcast in that, but the nature of, how we use and share information to be better at what we do. You're probably better than me, Robert, creating titles out of these things. But those are the key learnings, as they say.
Well, I'm kind of thinking that, I know I dropped it in there, but we kind of stuck with it, that we did the and/or as well. So we kind of got that people and/or, well, I guess from a LPI point of view, it could be that learning and/or performance.
Yeah, why not?
Brackets, people and/or culture, and/or digital, and/or.
Well, I was asked 3 years ago for the Learning Awards, what is the magic equation for learning and development? It's a question you get asked a lot, to comment on sort of panels and things. And there's no, people have always tried to come up with something really highbrow with it. And I thought that basically in 2019, when I said it, it's people plus technology equals performance. And it's 2 years later, I think I'll still stand by that now, really. Because of the amount that you can access with technology that you can't access through other people.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of, like your son with the shoelaces, the contextualization of that content, the people bit, and the 88.6% of people preferring virtual classroom, and that humanization of technological experiences, I still stand by it. I think it was probably one of the more prophetic, that was prophetic, not pathetic, things that I've said. So feel free to steal that if you want.
No, I like that. I do like that. Yeah. And I think that's the role of the leader again, to kind of, where's the balance at this moment in time, the context behind it. Does this person need a more personal touch? Do they need a technical approach? Do they need a blend between the two? It's, it's going back to the 80s, the situational leadership stuff with some different titles in there, I think, really. But it is what's required of me as a leader at this moment to help these people learn the things they need to do to get the results they want.
That's perfect. I mean, that's the subheading, isn't it?
There you go. I'll have that. That's in there. Subheading sorted.
You have to listen to that bit back.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you so much again, Ed, for joining me today. I've really enjoyed that conversation. What I should really have done, and what we will do next time, is to get you on the guitar, so we can listen to that. I think it's unfair for me to get you to do it today on the spot.
It's a bit David Brent, that, don't you think, though?
No, we're doing it, and if it turns out to be David Brent, awesome.
Even better. Okay.
Exactly. Look how popular that show was.
Yeah, it's all about you, Rob, at the end of the day. I mean, if it helps you, it's fine. I'll embarrass myself. I could play Green Sleeves or something for you. No problem.
Awesome. It was, I think it was on, Have I Got News for You once? I think it was Jacob Rees-Mogg was on there, and they tried to get him wear a wig. I don't know if you watched it.
I didn't see that.
And he refused to wear it, and so did Ian Hislop. And the other side, Paul Merton will just do anything. He put it on, and he just said, "It's amazing how many people think they've got pride to lose, isn't it?"
Well, that hurt.
So yeah, I'll make an idiot of myself. You get the guitar, I'll sing. We'll do a Chaz and Dave.
Get the trumpet.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you again, and we'll catch up soon, because I think there possibly is a lot of opportunity to delve into some of those subjects a little bit deeper. It's been fun. Yeah, thanks a lot, Rob. Cheers. If people would like to get in touch with you, by the way, Ed, what's the best way for them to do that, or follow what you do in the LPI? Yeah, the website is thelpi.org. Feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. It's Edmund, EDMUND, Monk. So if you find me on there, you can connect with me. I tend to accept connections from the L&D sector. That's probably the best way. Yeah. Oh, perfect. And I'll put those links on the descriptions on the audio and the video versions of this as well. So fantastic. Well, great. Brilliant. Have a great day. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Rob. Take care. All the best. Bye now. And that's it for the Leadership Untitled podcast for this week. This episode will be called Learning and/or Performance, on the back of the LPI's name and the struggle between knowing which one of those to concentrate on and whether it should actually be a mixture of both. My thanks again go out to Ed for joining me today on what was a fantastic conversation to have with him, and also you, the listener, for tuning in and listening in. If you'd like to get in touch with me to learn more about what I do, or to try and lead this way in your organisation, then please do so. Look at my website, www.robmorse.com, or get in touch with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Rob Morse. Until next time, thank you.